show me what the statistics says that the violence has increased in the border region. El Paso is designated as one of the safest cities in the nation to live in. Brownsville is a very safe city to live in. We've had 3 murders for the past 10 years on the average. So where's the violence attributed to the insecurity or problems that Mexico's having? We got to understand this. What's happening in Mexico is happening in Mexico, not on the U.S. side. So unless the numbers like Ciudad Juarez, they had over 6,000 murders on the Mexican side, but on the U.S. side, that hasn't been the case. So there's no spillover as far as I'm concerned. Now, if you're in the drug trade and you owe a debt, you can live in California, Arizona, and they're going to collect it. But those are the people that are involved in that. We ordinary citizens that live along this border live in peace and harmony with our neighbors. We go to Matamoros, for instance, myself, almost on a daily basis, and I don't fear what's going on over there. And also, let's put things in perspectives. Recently, you saw on the national TV where some nut killed like 5 policemen, you know, in a shootout. That happened in Reynosa also. Those are isolated incidents in the United States and in Mexico, and the government is dealing with them. And we need to support Mexico in these issues and violence by making sure that we secure our border and that arms are not being trafficked to the south, or ammunition, trying to deal with our demand for the drug, cut back on the demand to where the drug lords don't exist. Also, if you put things in perspective, look at the history of the United States. Chicago, Detroit, Washington, where they had lawlessness, gun battles in the street, same as Mexico, okay? It got so bad in Washington to where they passed laws to where it prohibited ordinary citizens from buying a handgun and owning a handgun. So the same thing is happening in Mexico. They're dealing with it. We need to support them, but we need to form alliances by building our economies, not killing our economies. The perception you refer to that is spilling over when it's not the case is hurting our local economies along the southwest border region. We saw also that spring breakers are not going to Mexico. You saw to where in the border region people are concerned because of the perception is being painted. They're afraid to travel. Okay, what's going to happen? The unemployment rate's going to go up on both sides. Okay, then you're going to have higher crime. So if you're trying to protect us from this, you know, you're creating it yourself by killing the economies, by building a wall, by militarizing the zone, or by creating a perception that's extreme and saying you need, like as DHS does, dangle the carrot before our law enforcement officials, saying, we'll send you an armor-plated vehicle with a machine gun because you needed to secure your border. Well, where's the violence that justifies having an armor-plated machine gun vehicle? It doesn't, okay? But then the media picks up on it and say, oh, it must be unsafe because if they have to have armor-plated vehicles in Brownsville to protect the border, then it is unsafe. But you are creating a picture that is misleading, does not represent the facts, the data doesn't support it, and we oppose the wall based on what's actually true.
Because your argument is that the border wall does not, in fact, deter border violence.
Not at all. It has nothing to do with violence. The violence has to do with drugs, the demand for drugs, and the lawlessness by some that choose that path, and here in the United States and in Mexico. And we must deal with that by coming up with a comprehensive plan, by forming alliances, and by understanding that we have a responsibility too, and it cannot ignore what happens to the South. And we should be concerned, and rightfully so. But let's work together to deal with the problem, not bury our heads in the sand and just shirk it off and say, hey, it's Mexico's problem alone. It's not. Until we deal with our demand over here, and until we deal with the smugglers, until we deal with the exportation of arms and ammunition, you know, it compounds the problem. And I support Presidente Calderon. I think he's doing the right thing. I think he's making a lot of progress, and you hear it on the news every day where they're making arrests. They are trying to deal with the problem in, I think, the best way they know how. But the United States needs to support them.
What would your advice to President Obama be on this issue?
I would say, you know, take a step back. And we've been overreacting. And I think we need to look at this very carefully. But let's look at it together. You know, I think Washington is disconnected. when it's making decisions that are affecting us over here without even consulting with us or really coming down here and assess whether the need is here to build a wall, whether the need is to militarize the border. The reality support what they're trying to do? I don't think so. And I think if we do that, I think we can achieve what we want to do and protect our citizens by securing our border. We got to pass immigration reform that allows legal immigration. We got to work collectively with law enforcement officials, making sure that we're not diluting our law enforcement, okay, to combat these problems. But we need to make sure they have the funding, the personnel, instead of bringing in people who are not trained in that field of law enforcement. If you bring the military to the border, you're going to see a repeat of what happened in El Paso years ago, where a shepherd was shot by somebody in the military by accident, because he overreacted. So we need to have the proper response to the problem, whether it's immigration, drug trafficking, terrorism, whatever it is. We need to make sure that we take into account what we do. How is it going to impact us on both sides of the border, economically, okay? How it's going to impact how we're going to live. Are we going to live in fear? Or are we going to live like we always lived, as Americans, with a right to, that shouldn't be suspended, like they have with the 7 laws that the DHS suspended, where it's killing our ecological corridor, it's killing our agricultural industry, it's killing our tourism industry, and it's creating more problems.